for the third time. I hope the third time is a charm. And we had, again, technical difficulties. I think it was a Zoom that time. For me, anyway, it wasn't Facebook Live. So can we pick back up on, because, so one of the threads that I want to make sure we talk about, and are we in the remnants or are we in the full out war? Are we in a war of sorts, not armed combat, but still in a war for the heart and soul of the world?
I definitely think so. I think the pandemic is, as has been quoted from Dr. Roy, is a portal, and we have the opportunity during this time to do some self-reflection and to think about the world that we want to create. And that is my hope, is that out of this, that we have an opportunity to improve the quality of life. And I see it across many different fronts. Number one, and I want to give a shout out to the South Florida people of color, our mutual friend, Jordana Hart, Ronnie Bennett, Francie, Kathleen, and all the crew. That has been the work that we've been doing to really help people understand kind of the history and the current manifestations of systemic racism in America. And we don't have to work really hard now to make that case, because COVID has laid it bare for all to see. And there's this, when we talk about kind of this legacy of control of Black bodies and commodification of Black bodies, I think it's really interesting with the COVID crisis. What you have is a case of damned if you do, damned if you don't. Because according to Black demographics, we are disproportionately represented among those groups that are considered to be essential workers, right? And so while your health is at risk, you are now required to go out and put your health on the line in order to be of service to this community. And so you have to think about kind of the socioeconomic implications of all these Black and brown bodies that are now being put on the line. And again, tie that into the disproportionate manifestation of disease and death for Black people and outcomes because of coronavirus. On the other hand, you have the mask requirements, right? And how difficult that's making it for us. So if you put on the mask, you're followed, pursued, seen as suspicious, which is going to increase anxiety and confrontation. And we've seen that play out. Don't have a mask on, then now you're being hyper policed. And we've seen reports come out, especially in a place like New York City, about the disproportionate level of arrest and violence that has been aimed at Black people around the enforcement of masks. And so there's so many different levels to the inequities that are just being laid bare for us right now. So and if we were to look at this and study and understand it, get serious about trying to alleviate some of this as we move forward, I think that would really be change in the making and creating something better for everyone. But the election of 2020 is a game changer. What is going to be done, what we will allow to be done, how we mobilize or fail to mobilize, how we get clear or don't get clear about who's working for us and who's not, is going to be a really big game changer. And I'm holding my breath, frankly. I'm going to get active. I'm going to do my part. But there is so much shifting sand and so much shiftiness that is going on right now. It seems that Donald Trump can do almost anything and get away with it. And, and so the movements he's making now against the post office have real implications for our ability to vote by mail. If, as many of the scientists are predicting, we find ourselves in the fall with another outbreak of coronavirus that is going to have us sheltering at home and having to make decisions about whether or not to go out to vote safely. With this new appointment in the post office, Trump now has the ability to forbid, the use of mail for ballots. That could be a pretty convenient way for him to eliminate a significant portion of the electorate in order to have the desired outcome, which is another term in office, which I think would be absolutely detrimental, not only for this country, but for the globe. So, Diane, I'm not hopeful. Maybe I should be. Hope is not my strong suit. I think they have a word for people like us, Afro pessimists. But we do have the potential to join hands across these various struggles to create a united front. And there are groups that are out there doing the work. The NAACP, the nation's oldest civil rights organization, and their new campaign, #WeAreDoneDying, is so powerful. If we can latch on to that and ride that vehicle, I think it could serve as an effort to mobilize us. Here in the state of Florida, we have New Florida Majority. There's a Color of Change. There are all of these groups that are trying to message and bring people together. It's just incumbent upon us to get in the game.
Well, I'd like for you to talk about the work that you're doing, the Awkward Dinners, the South Florida People of Color, but before you go and talk about that, I'm just wondering how might it be that we finally decide to do something? Because you see, when I'm saying that we, and I look at you and I look at me and I see two Black women, I want to make sure that to all the audience, at least from my perspective, this is not a Black thing. This is white people's work. This is white supremacy. This is like centuries old white supremacy. We're still in it. And white people have benefited from it. White people developed it. White people maintain it and keep it going by not even wanting to look at their privilege, by denying that racism even exists. And so now Trump is sort of affecting everybody, but white supremacy is still behind the curtain as the problem. But that problem is for white people to solve. And so that doesn't mean that people like Tameka or me or anybody, we're not willing to help by suggesting things or even providing certain kinds of leadership, but not to take down white supremacy. That's white people's work, in my opinion.
I agree with you. And as a historian, when we look at periods where there have been major advancements in the plight of Black people, they were not achieved without the real support and partnership with white leaders and white foot soldiers. And that's true of the abolitionist movement. That is true of the civil rights movement. And I think it will be true of the anti-racist movement, that we are going to need allies to come out in great numbers. And we debate this all the time with South Florida people of color and, what we are doing. And, is it really our role as people of color to be creating spaces for whites to come in and to learn? Isn't this work that they can do on their own? Maybe, probably, but I think that I know for myself what I found, and it's been a surprise to me as someone who envisioned a career for myself as teaching Black history to Black people, to now find myself with a new audience who is interested in listening to what I have to say as an educator and a writer, so that they can learn more of the truth. The reactions that I've had from people who've come to our South Florida People of Color events, who've read my book, they're devastated because this is a part of American history that they did not know. And the fact that they were willing to read, the fact that they were willing to come to programs and engage, says to me that there still is work to be done, and I have a role in doing that. And so from our community race dialogues and all of the wonderful authors and folks that we brought in, Paul Ortiz and his book on the Afro-Latinx history of America, to Nathan Connolly, looking at the history of segregation, residential segregation in Miami. Those conversations, Marvin Dunn, who is a historian of Black Miami, and what he has brought to our audiences and been able to share about the history with these groups, is it's been we've been able to build a movement, I'd like to think, and we continue to consider how we can leverage our audience to work towards the end of systemic racism. And so this is our little corner of the world down in South Florida, but we are trying to move the needle forward. But I think it takes all of us engaged, those who are willing to learn, those who are willing to educate to get us to the next step. But the next step really has to be around action. How can you?
I agree. I totally agree with you. And when I say that this is white people's work, I mean, it must be white people who are on the front lines, because for a lot of different reasons. Not only is this white people's work because they're the ones that built it, created it, maintain it, and benefit by it, but they're the ones who can most likely survive. So if we just look at Michigan and look at the movement to take over the State House. And so you see a gang of white people, mostly men, maybe not all, but mostly in full armor and full gear, all the guns and all the kind of weaponry. And they can go in and they can go into the State House that's surrounded by police officers and security guards. And not a one of them ended up dead. And a Black group can't do that. And so my friend, relative, actually, Terry, we've had this discussion before, and he brings up the Black Panthers in the 60s. And they marched up, up the streets in Sacramento, and they had guns. Yes, but after that, there was gun control. And so we would have full-on gun control but now we see that a Black person doesn't even have to have any gun whatsoever and still end up dead. You could be a 12-year-old kid in a playground running around with your toy gun, even if it was a real gun. So it's all around, running around the playground. And he didn't even get a 5-minute stop. What are you doing? Put your gun. None of that. Within about 3 seconds, he was dead. So the work of being on the front lines has to be the work of white people, because they're most likely to survive, and also because this is their job.
Right. I definitely agree with you there. And when you talk about the difference between, right, the police reaction to a Tamir Rice, and that timing also is a factor in what we see with Ahmaud Arbery. It was, very quick after that confrontation that he was shot and killed by these whites. It also is tied to the history of the demonization and criminalization of Black skin. Black skin is threatening to people and is weaponized in the minds of whites. And so it's threatening enough in their minds, which is a sick and twisted pathology.
Why do you think that is? Why is that?
It is 400 years of socialization. And to go back to my analogy, I've said this before in some of our workshops, the condition has changed. Slavery has gone away. Jim Crow has gone away. But the thing that remains in our society is the stigma that is attached to having heavily melanated skin in society. It is something that is visual. It is something that from the time that you're a child, because of the messages that are perpetuated in the media, you are taught to believe in the inferiority and the criminality, that Black people are less intelligent, that they're less deserving. All of those subliminal messages from the time that we are 2 and 3 years old are a part of the landscape that all of us have inherited here in this country. And so that has been the most difficult thing to root out. And so I really am a fan. And part of the other reason, the logic behind the work that we do with South Florida people of color. And I'm really grateful for my colleagues that have joined us out of the academy. We have English professors, we have professors of psychology, myself as a historian. because there is so much good knowledge that has been developed, theories and understanding of race and society that are really trapped in these ivory towers that can help us to really understand the phenomena that we are experiencing. So when we talk about implicit bias now, right? That's a term that started, with our sociologists, and now we are beginning to put that language on the street. When we have concepts of anti-racism that are being put on the forefront by Robin DiAngelo and Ibram Kendi that are, we just had this conversation the other night with a broadcast I was on with the NAACP, because one of my colleagues talked about love being the answer. And I was like, we've got to complicate what we understand about the struggle, because love is not enough. We've tried that. Maybe we need to redefine it, because standing in defense of the things that are important to me can also be love, in the same way that we have to complicate what we think racism is. That for so long we think that racism is people in Klan uniforms or neo-Nazis, when your silence and complicity in what is happening when there's violence, when there's injustice against people of color, is helping to keep that system alive. And so for Robin DiAngelo, passive being a passive anti-racist is just as bad as being a racist, because when you look at the ultimate outcome, nothing happens. What counts is being an active anti-racist. And the other piece about this work, Diane, that is really important and that I keep being reminded of is that, yes, some of this education is for whites who are being introduced to bodies of knowledge that they just hadn't been exposed to. But you maybe wouldn't be surprised, but I think a lot of people would. I sometimes am caught by surprise, but I've come to expect it, at how little Black people understand about the struggle that they're in and the complexity of it, the root of it. And until we really get to a different understanding, we're going to continue to have a situation where I fear that we are actually moving the needle backward. The needle for racial progress in this country, in some ways, has actually stalled, I believe, and is moving in a very dangerous direction. So we've got to continue, I think, to have those conversations and to work on that.
I agree. I've had this conversation recently. It's like when we talk about white supremacy, it's not an idea, a notion that's in the heads of just the white people. White supremacy, the idea of certain things are that white is right in a lot of ways. I mean, I'm going back now to when I was a kid, when they would say white is right. If you're brown, stick around. If you're Black, get back.
Mm-hmm.
Now, what is that? Has that gone away? Do we still look at hair and features and skin color within the Black community and see, don't go outside in the sun because you might get dark. Bring home a nice, different, lighter colored person to fix up your kids. I mean, these things, the white supremacy, we breathe the same air. We drink the same water. We watch the same movies. We go to the same schools, more or less. Well, we get the similar kinds of education, and we are on the same jobs. We have to learn the same things. And so is it any surprise that there's enough white supremacy to go around? And and don't even talk about the new immigrants, any immigrants. First thing that they learn to be accepted in America is stay away from Black people. So there's a lot of, it's not just a Black and white. Black is bad. I mean, white is bad and Black is good. It's white supremacy, the system, and how we all have we're soaked in it, soaked to the bone. So,
I agree. It's I think we have to continue to fight and engage, and I would argue with you, though. I'll quibble with you a little bit around same education, because I don't think that the education that we receive serves people of color, Black folks especially. We still are getting short end of the stick many of the times. in terms of the way that we are taught about the past. Women, same thing. Native Americans, same thing. So there is still a lot of work to be done in terms of working towards true equity, true inclusion in American society. But it's about, you know, how are we going to go about the work. But I think the call for this season is voting at every level. And I don't know. What are you thinking about Biden today and the headlines around him and the most unfortunate quote
When
that
he
he
said,
made while he was
if you're black, you're not black if you if you're thinking, what did he say? Something about you're not black if, or
yeah,
you must not be black then. That's what he said.
you can't be black and think that you're going to vote for Trump.
Yeah,
Is
well, you
essentially
know,
that part.
I don't see, I I just because a person is saying these things that a lot of other people say, that has no bearing on me. I don't care, frankly.
But you know that there are a lot of
I want to
people.
get, I want to, I'm looking at Trump as, as another 4 years of Trump. And then, if that's what we deserve, that's what we deserve. But Biden, yeah, he has a lot of, it would be we could maybe have another, a different, better candidate, but maybe he's the candidate that we have. And I say, vote a straight blue ticket.
Yeah.
And
Well, there are a lot
that's
of,
all I can say.
but there are a lot of African Americans who are dissatisfied with him as a candidate. And I've seen declarations across my social media today that this was the disqualifying thing. They don't care about Trump. There is no way that they could vote for someone like Joe Biden, and that that he's a racist. We're still dealing with the allegations coming from Tara Reid. And I have to say it puzzles me because I think it smacks of a lack of political sophistication, that you really don't understand the game if you're willing to make statements like that. Because the reality is, for men of a certain generation, it won't be for another 20 years that I think we can hold really and truly a candidate to the puritanical standards that many of us have around race and gender, just because these are men from an era in America that we just really hadn't gotten that far. And more importantly, this is bigger than Uncle Joe. This is bigger than a lot of things. The things that are going to matter to us most immediately are going to be our local politics. And so the point that you made about voting a straight blue ticket, we have to be very clear that when you compare the difference between the Republicans and the Democrats, there is some real anti-blackness happening on the red side of the aisle. The people who have the most in common with our outcomes as a group of people are members of the Democratic Party. But I'm telling you, I see it already. The Russians are going to get those bots going all over again. And we're going to see it. We're gonna see this become a very narrow contest in November.
And see, and Tameka, then shame on us, because this is exactly the playbook for Hillary. Now, did I love Hillary? No, I don't find her particularly lovable, but I don't find her hate-filled, and I didn't find she didn't come down an elevator saying Mexicans are rapists, and she didn't do any. I mean, she wasn't a birther. She didn't go after President Obama for 3 years. She wasn't with Mitch McConnell, keeping him, and that was our fault too, that we couldn't generate enough, whatever it would take, to make it so that he got his Supreme Court pick. Now we see, if we can't see what happened after voting for Trump, and now anything that comes up, and I'm not saying these aren't egregious things in a perfect world, maybe I'd pick somebody else. But if I have a choice between, now Obama picked Joe Biden and managed to have him at his side successfully. And so I'm going to go for Joe Biden or anybody. It could have been, there were some people that I like less than Joe Biden, I'd vote for them. But it doesn't even occur to me to go vote for Jill Stein. And that's what some people did. They went, voted for Jill Stein. That was a vote for Trump. And so if we can't see this, if we can't see what's going on and what we're being fed, then we deserve to have Trump for another 4 years until he takes the whole planet down. That's what
Yeah.
we deserve.
I think that may be where the work is over the next several months, is making sure that people are just crystal clear about what all of this means. And then, outside of the political realm, what are we going to do for ourselves and our communities and those? I mean, I think we've only begun to see the tip of the iceberg when it comes to the economic fallout of the COVID-19 crisis. When we talk about these unemployment rates here in the state of Florida, our unemployment system still hasn't paid out thousands of people who are due benefits, and that's leading to evictions. And there's just going to be this snowball effect that we're going to continue to see that is going to disproportionately affect people of color. And I think that will also be an area where we will need to mobilize in order to, in the short term, lessen the suffering of people, but in the long term, ask the question, how can we use our votes? How can we make our political power work towards anti-racist ends by going to war with policies and politicians who are doing things that bolster as opposed to end systemic oppression? That is where the work is. So I'm hoping that we can get there.
I don't know, because the problem that I see is that we aren't even asking those questions. Not us. We ask those questions, but those questions are not coming up especially not in the progressive arena. All the progressives, they're not asking the questions about oppression. And so here, Tameka, look at this. Now we can see, just like what you said when we first started in this discussion, essential workers. Who are these essential workers? And we see that they're Black and they're brown, they're poor. Not every one of them, but like some of them aren't, but a lot of them are. Your grocery clerks, your people that are delivering your food because you don't want to go out and take a chance on the infection, but they're out and they're going knocking from door to door, and they're getting infected, and they're working in nursing homes. Those jobs working in nursing homes are not high-paid jobs. And then you've got a president who can sign an executive order that looks as near to me as against the 13th Amendment of anything I've seen, which declares that these chicken factories, the people must go back to work, go back to their jobs. And so what they're trying to do now is to ensure that there's no more unemployment money, so that and if you are not making $600 a week, that's a very low rate of pay. So if you can sit home and feel comfortable in getting $600 from the pandemic funds, then we have a lot of things we need to look at. This whole system of pay, and we say the people are essential workers, but we're not interested in paying people a living wage whatsoever.
So that becomes a part of the political agenda. A living wage is something that would fundamentally change the game in terms of people's health outcomes, their living conditions, the quality of life, parents and children. So it's things like that we have to begin to connect the policies, and minimum wage is a policy. How can we fight for that so that we can have better and more equitable living experiences and living conditions for people? That's something that is worth interrogating and worth working towards. But we've got to begin to build that civic muscle, and with civic engagement and with teach-ins. I've participated in some of those in the years past to help people connect the dots between historical patterns of voter disenfranchisement and manipulation, so that they know the score, they know the game, and they're ready to engage come November of this year, because there is quite a bit that is going to be at stake. And what we're seeing with those essential workers is, it's tough. And when you talk about the chicken plant, that's very personal for me. And the fact that the president would use his War Powers Act not to mandate the production of PPE or face masks, but for meat, is astounding. My aunts, uncles, grandparents worked in the chicken plant down in Swanee County. It was one of the largest employers in the Tri-County area between Swanee County, Madison County, and Hamilton County. Very hard, very difficult work. And those were Black and brown folks who are there being involved. But when you looked at the rates of spread under those working conditions, and these people are literally putting their lives at stake so you can have a chicken sandwich, is astounding to me. But the only thing that can change that is us as voters, and us using our power collectively to shift the priorities and the people who have their levers on power today.
And and now I'm going back to what you said earlier when you took you said you were going to back me up a little bit. And I think have made myself clear when I'm talking about it's white people's work. I mean, they need to be on the front lines of if there's any kind of movement out toward doing something external, it has to be white people. But I think it's perfectly reasonable and for all people of color, all the historians that you mentioned, to do the writing, to do the teaching, and if people want to learn, to come forward and learn. And so, in fact, let me give a plug. I'm doing I with my co-host, who's not here today, Farrell Saunders, in collaboration with the Somerville Media Center, we're doing a workshop, a retreat, a race retreat, to learn and to practice talking about race. And that's going to be on June 13th. And I'm hoping that Facebook Live can stay alive better than it did today. And so right now you can go to my you can go to my Facebook page and sign up and come on Zoom and participate in that. We're going to do some work on race, talking about race. So
very important. I'm really glad to hear about that event. I can't wait.
Yeah,
you really have been doing the work.
it's going to be good because we're bringing forward a slightly different way. You were in Greece. We were all in Greece. Jordana was in Greece. I was there. You were there. And we were there with Arnie and Amy Mendel and all the whole World Work group. And so there's a lot of important work that I've learned and other people have learned from the Mendels. And so this is to bring some of that work, which is sitting in the fires. You've got to stay. You can't just keep jumping up and running because you feel uncomfortable. You've got to sit in the fire, and you've got to sit in the fire until you burn what's inside of you, your own wood. You'll find you've got it inside of you. So that's June 13th. You can sign up. It's free. We're doing this as a service to people who want to participate and who want to learn. So what are you doing next with South Florida people of color? What is the work you're doing?
I have transitioned. So because of my job duties now, I have a less availability than I used to. But they still like me and let me hang out. So I am now on the board of South Florida People of Color. And we are having some conversations about virtual programming. We're looking for funds to continue the work. Once we kind of get back to normal, hopefully we can do some programs in the virtual environment. but Ronnie and the whole crew is working really hard to keep the momentum, to keep the message going. And actually, there was a talk about a virtual aqua dinner. We have
Wow.
the capacity to do that. I think it would be quite phenomenal to be able to try to attempt something like that. But I didn't think that a virtual happy hour would go over, and those are really fun. So hey, we certainly can do
Well,
a virtual aqua
if
dinner.
you have a virtual awkward dinner, then I can come to that. That would be fun.
Right. Okay. So
Yeah,
that's just
yeah.
the motivation I needed for sure.
And so one of the things that I want to bring up to everybody who hears this now and anytime in the future, what if people want to know what do we need to be some help here? The biggest thing that we need are funds. Black people would get all this education, but the funding still largely is in the hands of mostly white people. So if white people want to help, they can pour some funds into South Florida people of color, and they can look on my Facebook page where I have a funding opportunity. You can donate there. You just give money. Give money. If you hear something that you like and you want to see more of it, you've got to support it. It's got to be funded.
Right.
That's
And I
what you
think we're
can do.
again, my mind is very much with on the folks who are going to be impacted by this economic downturn. Mutual aid societies to help people keep a roof over their heads, to be able to pay their bills, to support families where parents have to work and take care of children. Summer is going to be a huge issue as our country starts to open back up. And again, Black people who are disproportionately considered to be essential workers are having to go, and there may not be the summer camps or summer experiences there and available for their children. Supporting efforts that are going to help the least of those, that help to compensate in some small way for the economic inequality that exists and the racial wealth gap in this country, is where we ought to be focusing on two levels. I think the personal level, the philanthropy is what you're speaking to right now, Diane. But we also need to pair that with our politics and begin to use the power that we have there to work towards it. I've been been really inspired by a number of Black women that I know and Black women that I don't know personally, from Stacey Abrams, Jasmine Rogers Shaw, who's done some work with us with South Florida People of Color, is now running for a state office. Melba Pearson is running for state attorney for Miami. One of my former students is running for office in Pensacola. I'm going to be broke, but I am so inspired by all of these women of color stepping into, I think, a rightful position. Black women have a tremendous knowledge and spirit within us, and what we've inherited from our foremothers. The ability to survive difficult conditions, very often with a lot of grace, and the wisdom that has come with that over the years. I think it's high time that we began to offer that and have it be appreciated and celebrated. And people stand behind us as we take the forefront and share the wisdom that comes from our lived experience. So I'm hopeful that things will continue to improve as we get leadership that really and truly reflects the communities and the people across this nation.
And that's, so you said one thing, let me just add this additional idea. When you speak of the essential workers and the camps and the schools and that is not for sure. We don't know. And even if it's even safe, it isn't even safe. But there's one group that I know of here in the Boston area, and it's probably the same all throughout the country. And those are the YMCA, because they are all through this the early stages of this epidemic. They're still doing daycare. They're open for for essential workers to bring their children, because they don't have any place else for them to go, and they must go to work. So there's another place to send some support to the YMCA. It's the Boston Y here, and you must have a Y. They have to be doing the same things all over the country.
Hmm. Yeah, there's YMCA's, YWCA's in South Florida.
Yeah.
I don't know as much about them, but they are probably a good place to look in order to be of assistance. But there's an entire landscape here in South Florida of people who are trying to address these issues. So, for sure.
Well, thank you.
Thank you.
Tameka.
It was a
Thank
pleasure
you.
to be with you. I'm a fan. Like you are life goals. I want to be doing yoga and teaching yoga when I'm your age.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, you have to do it and you have to teach it because that's how you maintain mobility. You know, you have to do it. It's a daily thing. And so as a plug for yoga, don't wait until you can't move. I mean, even if you wait until you can't move, you can still get to be better. But if you start now while you're able to move everything and work and do a workout just an hour a day, come and join my class. I do that every day.
Where can they find more information on your class on your Facebook
Uh,
page?
I'll put it back up again. I put it up every now and then, but I'll put it up and join that. And it's on a sliding scale. So people can pay what they have or what they want. I would like to have a full class every day because I'm convinced that that movement is important to keep our bodies. We only have this one body. You
Just
know,
the one.
we have to make it last the whole life.
I love this. When I think about yoga, I think about something that someone said to me, and that is that you're as old as your spine. And I have found that to be some very those are some very inspirational words
Yeah.
about taking care of your body, taking care of your spine, and why yoga is important for us as a
And
preservative.
another thing that I've learned about the spine, the other thing that you need to do in addition to your spine is your core. You need to have muscles running all up and down your spine so that when if the spine ever starts to slack off and can't do the work, you've got a muscle system that can hold the spine up.
Hmm.
And so there's a lot of work, but it's a joy.